Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more revenge stories. In today's video you will find out what happens when a chemical company dumps toxic waste on a farmer's property. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, Mess with My Land? I will educate myself and sue your company. Never mess with a farmer. A Chinese farmer has spent 16 years studying law by himself so he could sue a chemical company for allegedly polluting his land. And by the way guys, I apologize in advance for mispronouncing all these Chinese names. Anyway, Wang Enlin, who had just 3 years of education, has won the first instance in a high-profile case against state-owned Kiwa Group, reported the People's Daily Online. Although Kiwa Group, whose assets exceed 2 billion yuan, which is 233 million pounds, has appealed against the decision. The elderly man said he is determined to seek justice for himself and his neighbors who could no longer grow healthy crops on their contaminated land. Mr. Wang, who is in his 60s, lives in the Yushutun village on the outskirts of Kikiwa in the Heilongjiang province, according to People's Daily Online, which cited China Youth Daily. The man said he would forever remember the year of 2001 when his land was flooded by the toxic waste discharged by the chemical company. It was the eve of the Lunar New Year and Mr. Wang was playing cards and making dumplings with his neighbors. All of a sudden, they realized that the house they were in was flooded by the wastewater from the nearby factory. The wastewater also flooded part of the farmland in the village. According to the report, a government document from 2001 claimed that the affected farmland cannot be used for a long time due to the pollution. Between 2001 and 2006, it has been suggested that the chemical company continued to dump hazardous waste into the village, whose residents rely upon agriculture for a living. The company produced polyvinyl chloride and released 15,000 to 20,000 tons of chemical waste every year, the report said. The chemical company has also reportedly created a 71-acre wasteland with calcium carbide residue and a 478-acre pond with its liquid waste. In 2001, Mr. Wang wrote a letter to the Land Resources Bureau to complain about the pollution the chemical company had brought to his village. He said while dealing with the local officials, he was repeatedly asked to produce evidence to prove that the village's land had been polluted. Mr. Wang told a reporter, "I knew I was in the right, but I did not know what law the other party had broken, or whether or not there was evidence." He received the interview in his small home, which he spent 50 yuan, which is about $7 per month, renting from the village's authority. As a result, Mr. Wang decided to study law by himself, an endeavor he would carry on pursuing for the next 16 years. The farmer, who had dropped out of primary school at the 3rd grade, started reading through a dozen law books with the help of a dictionary. At the time, he did not have money to buy the books, so he spent day after day reading the books at the local bookstore and copying the relevant information by hand, according to the man. In return, he would give bags of free corn to the shopkeeper for letting him stay there. Not only that, he also used the legal knowledge he had learned to help his neighbors gather evidence. Their farms had also been polluted by Kiwa Group, the chemical company, said Mr. Wang. In 2007, a Chinese law firm specialized in handling pollution-related cases started providing free legal advice to Mr. Wang and his neighbors. They also agreed to help the villagers file petition to the court. However, due to unspecified complications, the court only began processing Mr. Wang and his neighbor's case in 2015, 8 years after the original petition had been made, People's Daily Online reported. Thanks to the evidence Mr. Wang had gathered in the 16 years, Mr. Wang and his neighbors apparently won the first instance. The district court ruled that the families in Yushutun village would receive financial compensation from the chemical company amounting to around $131,000. And yeah guys, for now that is unfortunately the end of the story, Ripe Stars, but I just thought that this story is totally different than the usual ones we read, but I found it to be very inspiring. This poor farmer essentially grew up with nothing, did not even finish primary school, and still had the courage and will to study for 16 years in order to get some sort of justice. Or revenge if you will, but I would say it's not really a revenge story. It makes you wonder how many great stories we could have from China, but unfortunately due to the language barrier we probably never get access to them. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this very different story, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled 1 and 20 Years Paying the Witch Back. Buckle up, it's a long ride with a pleasant finish. Some time back, I was hired to a company by a CEO I had previously worked for someplace else. He was a good friend, so when his newest company was not achieving sales, he headhunted me to join the new one. The company had not made a sale in 2 years. Year 1 the software product was in beta, so it was not ready to be sold. Year 2 they realized using the tech staff to make high-end sales to C-level executives was the crappiest sales model one could conceptualize. In general, and there are exceptions of course, these two personality styles don't speak the same language. Tech people talk tech, buyers talk benefits and how the potential product fills needs. I bridged the gap well by translating tech speak into natural conversational language so buyers better understand how their needs will be filled. The job was an hour-and-a-half drive one way from my home, so the CEO said I could work from home as long as I kept the sales management tool current. It is where you keep the notes of each prospect's status. Came to important meetings and made sure the executive team had daily sales reports. The first month I made the daily 3-hour commute because I needed to have solid, constant interaction with all the departments to rapidly form my sales strategy and develop a two-way confidence level with the section heads. Once I had a handle on things, I was ready to launch my sales plan. In the meantime, the CEO hired a vice president of sales, Witch Boss, who started 4 days before I hit the ground, running to get in front of buyers. She was a VP coming from the banking industry and had a long career in sales and marketing in finance products. I hated her from the moment she arrived. She knew F all about tech and I spent huge time trying to orient her, which was not ideal because I needed to work on my sales strategy. They brought her on board because she had strong experience gaining financial investors. Nevertheless, I forged ahead, traveled to a target state and spent 19 days crisscrossing it. When I came back, I had 17 contracts from buyers, totaling about $2 million in sales. My CEO was overjoyed. Fast forward 6 months and now working from home, I am rocking and rolling. Sales are strong, CEO is happy, good things are happening. Witch Boss has landed an investor willing to drop $6 million into the company and they are coming into town for a discovery meeting. She asks me to drive up because they specifically want to meet the salesperson. Seconds before walking in the door for the big meeting, Witch Boss pulls me aside and says she needs me to back her up on lie she has told them. Basically, she doubled my sales numbers. I told her there was no way I was going to do that. She says the CEO has okayed the lie. We get to the part in the talk where the investor is looking over my inflated sales numbers on the prospectus and then directly asks me how many sales I am making a month. Witch Boss is behind him waving her arms, but I was having none of it and answered truthfully. He looks askance, staring at the document, which has the false number listed, while she is giving me the stink eye behind him. No one says a word, dead silence. I ask to see the document and fates have aligned, allowing me to solve the dilemma. I explain the first 2 numbers were transposed, they correlated well to my real sales versus inflated sales if you flip-flop the first 2 digits, and then the potential investor was satisfied and we moved on. Switch gears, about a week later I was meeting with the CIO in his office and he referred to my big boobs. I am no shrinking violet, but it stunned me because it was so unexpected. That night I was chatting with my BFF who happens to be a lawyer, and I told him about it in casual conversation. He said I should tell the CEO so he can address it. Thinking along smart business practices, I decide to tell which boss to whom I directly report as proper protocol, since we don't have an HR department yet. Side note, I also reported directly to CIO as a boss, since my role was a muddy mix of sales and tech. The next day CEO calls me and I take him through it, telling him it is no big deal, but to make sure he talked to CIO so it didn't happen again. He says he will do it right away. 2 days later I check in with him and CEO still had not talked to CIO because the investors were in town. I gently push him to get it done and casually mention my best friend, who happened to be a lawyer, was the one who urged me to tell him because any good CEO would want to know about it. I reiterated I'm not mad or upset in any way. The only word he heard was lawyer. He went apecrap that I was bringing a lawyer into the mix, and now this guy was my good friend. We had worked together at 2 companies for years. I calmed him down, or so I thought, explaining that I only wanted him to talk to CIO. I also told him I had not brought a lawyer into it, that I had been innocently chatting with BFF, who just happens to be a criminal offense attorney. He seemed okay and we hung up. The next day I am working as usual and I get a call from an attorney who explains the company has hired her regarding my sexual harassment claim. I am flummoxed and adamantly told her that was not the case, that I had no claim against the company. She said otherwise. And that is when everything changed dramatically. CEO was furious with me for bringing this on when investors were looking at us. His reaction set the tone, which filtered down. The company began to retaliate against me. Witch Boss now made it her mission to make my life hell, forgetting to tell me about important meetings I was supposed to attend, freezing me out when I was in the office, telling me I could no longer even speak to CIO, a problem since I'm selling a multi-million-dollar tech product needing his input, and I directly reported to him as my other boss, denying me a long-planned approved vacation. Basically anything she could devise to screw me over, she was gleefully working it. Coinciding with this was a serious health problem I developed, ultimately requiring surgery. My illness had no impact on my work as I was able to work from home, which made things easier on me health-wise. Witch Boss then decided that I need to come to the office every day despite a 3-hour round-trip commute. Now I know you're thinking, why didn't I just leave, get another job somewhere else? The problem is, I needed the health insurance. There was no way to turn around another job fast enough, and I had a complex surgery scheduled requiring 3 surgeons for my procedure. My doctor gave me a note for them, which released me from having to make the daily commute so I could continue to work at home. As long as my work did not suffer, they legally could not force me to commute, especially since working from home was a part of my employment contract from the outset. The night before my surgery, Witch Boss calls me to tell me they have cancelled my health insurance. After hanging up with Witch Boss, I collapsed on the floor in a faint. I was so sick and mentally exhausted from all the stress. The next morning, the CEO frantically calls asking to talk to me. My mom refuses to let him. I am on official leave as of that morning and we are heading to the hospital. CEO had told their lawyer about cancelling my health insurance and she chewed him a new butthole, telling him it was illegal. They immediately reinstated my insurance. In the 2 weeks I was out, my mom had found a lawyer for me as it was clear shenanigans were going on. I still needed them as an employer because I was in no shape to rigorously job hunt while recovering. Turns out all the bullcrap they were doing to me is completely illegal. Companies are not allowed to retaliate against employees when they report nefarious acts against them. I met with my lawyer, who said I had an excellent claim for retaliation and took me on. He said I had to continue working there while he did his thing to stay within protocol while he filed the EEOC claim. Now it is time for me to return to work. The The company had relocated, planned during my absence, and witch boss refused to tell me where, so I couldn't come to work. Company lawyer told them they had to tell me, so witch boss gave me wrong directions, making me late on day 1. I walk in the new office and it looks like any other place except for one thing. There is a wide open area directly in front of the CEO's glass office with a single desk in the middle of it. Welcome to my new desk. Also, I was not allowed to do sales anymore. In fact, I was not allowed to do anything at all. Period. They had hired a bunch of new people to the company and they treated me like a pariah. Turns out witch boss had gone to them telling them a pack of lies, and if they know what is good for them, they will stay away. Since I had nothing to do, but I couldn't just sit there looking like a dope, I worked on documenting everything being done to me per my lawyer's advice. I was meticulous in my note-taking. Witch boss began writing me up. Stupid stuff like not answering my phone on the first ring and for asking questions during company-wide meetings, asking to see my personal file, which employees are legally entitled to do, although not entitled to photocopy any of it. Each time she wrote me up, I had to sign the write-up. There was a space for me to reply to it, so I consistently wrote, "I don't agree with this assessment." It infuriated her so much, she wrote me up again for writing the statement that I didn't agree with. There were several instances where she called me into her office and literally began screaming at me loudly and enthusiastically. I would not engage though. My standard answer to everything was, "Okay," which made her apoplectic, which apparently means extremely angry. At one point she is inches from my face screaming, her face beet red, and I just sat there with a dreamy expression whilst envisioning her blowing a vein in her head stroking out. I infuriated her with my equanimity. Still and all, I was in it to win it at this point. It did not matter what new humiliation they dished out, I took it all with a bland face, and then went to my desk and documented it in my notebook. She loathed my notebook, sure that I was doing exactly what I was doing, documenting, because it was my personal property though she couldn't take it from me. I had to carry all my belongings with me everywhere, company-wide meetings, the bathroom, lunch, because I caught her one time going through my desk drawer in my purse. Although it gave me great joy to write a note reading "F you," which I left in my backpack and jerry-rigging it so I could tell if she went into it, which she did. I withstood it all with a brave face, only breaking down once I left for the day. My attorney took a lot of sobbing phone calls during this period. Finally, the day comes that my attorney has what he needs and I can resign. Better still, he advises I don't have to give a 2 weeks notice. I come back from lunch and type up my letter with one sentence. The sentence was, "I resign immediately." I take it into the HR guy, who also took part in their evil machinations, and hand it to him. His mouth forms an O shape and he half stands up from his chair as he reads it. He looks up and I give him a smile and say "bye bye", just as sweet as pie, walked out the door and drove home feeling mighty fine. 1 month later, my lawyer and I are at the EEOC office along with the CEO, witch boss and their lawyer, so the EEOC can review my claim. In my state, you cannot just bring a lawsuit against a company for things like harassment and retaliation. Claims must first be evaluated by the EEOC, and then if they determine you have enough grounds to file a lawsuit, they issue a right to sue document. And by the way guys, as far as I can tell, EEOC stands for Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in the United States. My lawyer presented my case logically and forthright, detailing all the evidence. It took him 40 minutes to go through it all, and then they presented their side with allegations of my poor employment, along with their evidence, which were all the copious write-ups witch boss had written. EEOC asks about the timeline of the write-ups, inquiring if they were before or after my claim occurred. Witch boss, wearing a smug, self-satisfied smile, states that they were all prior to my claim, as noted by the dates on each document. EEOC lady looks at my lawyer looks at me, I look at witch boss and then serenely pull out my photocopies of the documents. Whilst handing them to EEOC lady, witch boss barks, "She is not supposed to have those, they are company property." I show EEOC lady that the dates have clearly been altered by Witch Boss. She had made copies with the dates blanked out and then backdated them. You see, whenever she wrote me up, I had to take the document personally to the CEO to put in my personal file. Along the way though, I stopped at the copier and took copies. She never knew I was doing this, you could have heard a pin drop. EEOC lady reviews the copies and then slowly sets them on the table. She did not say a thing for a long time and then she spoke. I can remember her words exactly to this day. I have seen a lot of ill treatment and illegal undertakings by both employees and employers, including forged or altered documents, but I have never seen someone so incredibly stupid to present documents this easily disproved. Not only are employees entitled to receive and keep a copy of formal write-ups, but reading these ridiculous allegations, it is obvious you are trying to manufacture your case. She went on to say I had a clear case for a lawsuit and moreover, I would win it. She recommended their side go in another room and determine a settlement amount to pay me immediately or risk the lawsuit. They went to a nearby office and I could hear the lawyer dressing them down. Words I heard included, lied to me, lied to EEOC, presenting false documents, broke so many laws, figure out a number big enough to pay her so this does not go to court because you will lose. They came back with a $50,000 offer, which we accepted. My lawyer and I left and then did a football touchdown dance in the parking lot. Looking up at the EEOC window, I could see Witch Boss in the window looking miserable and crying. She had just been fired. That was my 1-year revenge. I am not a hateful person, I get mad and get over it, but for Witch Boss I nurtured hatred and vowed to one day get revenge, so I kept tabs on her and discovered she opened a finance marketing company after she was fired. Then I waited a year before exacting my petty delight. For the past 18 years I have executed a wonderful soul-refreshing project. Each year I go to her website and write down all the work email addresses and phone numbers for the employees. Then I subscribe them all to get more information from places like online schools, online insurance companies, all those bullcrap aggressive organizations that keep your contact information longer than a gypsy ducking curse while trying to sell you stuff. The last few years I have subscribed them to an email bomb service where the service takes the address and instantly subscribes it to thousands of newsletters, request for more information feeds and other online buyers of email addresses for marketing services. I tested it with a burner email and it wreaks havoc on your inbox with thousands of emails received within seconds and they never ever stop. You literally have to close down the email because it cannot be salvaged. Each year when I go to collect the contact information, all the emails have been changed to new ones. Last year my cousin took a job in the same building. I enlisted her help and she made it a point to befriend a receptionist working for Witch Boss. After executing my yearly plan, my cousin went to lunch with her. The receptionist was in a foul mood and explained the entire organization was in disarray because IT had to redo all the emails again. It keeps happening over and over and nobody can figure out why. She said the owner, Witch Boss, has had to get her cell phone number replaced 3 times because of all the texts and phone calls she gets whenever it happens again. Sometimes Witch Boss would have her phone number on the website which I dully subscribed to everything under the sun. The best part for me though was hearing how she lost a mega client because they felt the company was in too much turmoil so often. The thought of this keeps me warm and cozy at night and I sleep so very well. Edit, I forgot to include a key piece to the story I remembered. A Redditor mentioned how great it would have been if the investor pulled out, which triggered the memory. The investor did pull out of the deal. Once I left the company, they were unable to generate sales like I had been doing. They had small onesie and twosie sales, but nothing of the ilk I was generating. The new sales numbers were so dismal, the investor got skittish. The company eventually went on to success, but it took them a lot longer to get there because of the fiasco. And yeah, Ripe Stars, unfortunately that is the end of this XXL Mega Revenge saga, and I would love to hear your opinion about this story. Do you think that OP went too far or not? Let us know in the comments. But I gotta say, even though this was a very enjoyable XXL revenge story, I still prefer the Chinese revenge story if you ask me. And Ripe Stars, with this we have unfortunately reached the end of today's video. However, if you cannot get enough of my stories, then I would highly suggest you to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will show up at any moment in the left corner of the screen, which includes over 1000 Ripe stories. In addition, if you would like to share one of your own stories, then please head on over to r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, where you can post your own story and there is a good chance that I might read it in a video. In addition, please also check out my Patreon at patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive Reddit videos that you won't find on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, your daily support is very much appreciated, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.